Alright, so at this point right now, let's go back. We've looked at the first videos on this series, we talked about basic music theory. And at the end of it, we talked about notation. And at the end of that basic music theory course, we talked about some advanced theory concepts and some thoughts on that. Most of that should have been very informative and very much put you at ease after you had understood what was being said, with trying to relate to some of those things. You might have watched the videos one or two times, and it also very much tried to relate to things so that you could take it into the audio engineering realm in case you're recording, mixing, and mastering. And we covered most of the basics pretty well and talked about some advanced concepts. Then we went into the next advanced series, and we talked about some advanced theory concepts. Some of those videos may seem a little bit wandering and may not sound like they're polished, because advanced theory sometimes is polished and sometimes it's not. There are a lot of concepts that are built from building blocks into tapestries that there's no theory on that. There are building blocks to use to fly, to go wherever you want. And, it's very hard at times to say, this is the way to do that, because it's just not. You're playing in the key of G, and all of a sudden you want to go to, C, harmonic minor, or some jazz scale or pentatonic scale or some exotic scale from the Orient that, and how you might just weave in and out of that and go all over the place. There's no theory on that. There are conceptual theories of things that people have done that they've tried to make them theoretical, but there just isn't. You can go through time and look at things that people have done throughout history. That's very time consuming. You can spend the whole rest of your life doing that. I do suggest you look around that a little bit, but I did for a while and I got lost. I was just like, well, I can do this the rest of my life, instead of picking up my instrument and playing, and experimenting around and digging around when I want to, when I really have a need to find something out after I did some basic studies on that kind of stuff. And then we talked about a whole lot of very complex, theoretical concepts in advanced theory that basically try to boil it down to keeping the simple building blocks simple and building complex tapestries out of that and having a good idea of where you're going. And when you just completely abandon theory and just start flying off somewhere, that you carry those building blocks around with you to set in place, in case you start building another foundation. Because the most part, you're not just going to wander around aimlessly forever, and the rest of the band's going to need to have some idea where you're going anyway. And there's a good chance that from the theoretical concepts that have been built throughout history, that they were built because people found themselves using those concepts a lot in the composition. So you're more likely to find yourself coming back to them to, have foundations of other things you start doing, even as you weave complex tapestries. So that's very hard to try to relate to somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience doing that. Even myself, trying to word that, it's like, well, I try to word it in a way that it sounds easy to understand, but sometimes it's just a matter of trying to understand the basic building blocks as some tapestry changes direction. And where did they land? They took off on a flight of fancy, and then where did they land? Did they land in some key or some scale, or, are they kind of some scale, or have they added something to some scale or some key? Are they using just some borrowed chords, or are they just some chord that came to mind that sounded good, and then they tried to get back into key, or they went off into some other key or some other scale, some other timing signature, some other type of genre, that's trying to catch those things. That can be very difficult, and the more complex it gets. And I've seen some artists, they get into things that are just, it's very difficult to try to follow along what's going on without getting the music and going, well, what the heck was he doing there? And hopefully notated it well, because it just sounds, it's like trying to figure out what the heck's going on there without having the understanding what's going on in his head, or having the paper to look at. That can be very difficult at times. So basically at this point, we've talked about most of the basic concepts. Some of the things we didn't really get into were some basics of, playing around on, an example is, progressions. Where am I going to go? I hear people ask that a lot. Where am I going from here? I've got 2 or 3 chords, and where do I go from there? Well, depending on the composition, if it's instrumental or if it's some type of song, and you're trying to find some type of structure that's verse, chorus, pre-chorus, bridge, lead, some kind of structure to work from, or you've got, some kind of verse, even if it's instrumental or a chorus, you can kind of look at it the same way, having sections, and, some study of some instrumentals throughout history can give you a real good understanding of that, some types of constructions that they've used that are building blocks that to work from, just like scales and keys, some types of, like a simple example of a song like intro, verse, chorus, bridge, lead, and, going on like that. They've been doing that throughout history with all kinds of different formulas for doing that. And it's a good idea to research that some, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. Some of those concepts can be just a little bit much right away, because if you're not applying it immediately, that you may be trying to learn songs, and you may be trying to learn songs, or you're trying to compose. And most of the theory stuff, you can learn to play some songs and not really have a really good understanding of theory. Does that make sense? You just need to understand what's going on in the music so that you can read the notes and play what's going on, so you can know what the notes are and understand where they're happening in space and time and some of the notations that are happening there, and off you go with not a whole lot of music theory knowledge. And that can be very true. So, but we are talking about music theory, and that other stuff will come with the music theory and that you're understanding. So the other concepts we want to talk about can get very complex, but sometimes they can be very instrument specific, and sometimes they're not. But the basic concepts of music theory and getting into advanced theory to where you're trying to do something or go somewhere or do something with something that, it's that whole concept. We're going to try to get a little more instrument specific. So we are going to, at this point, my main instrument is the guitar. So we are going to move away from the piano, because we have a pretty good understanding of our notation. We have a pretty good understanding of our music theory and being able to see that on the piano. And we are going to take our music theory and our notation understandings and concepts, and we're going to move into the area of instrument specific. And most of these concepts that we talk about, the chordal harmonies, the scales, the progressions, chords and keys, and most of the basics that are happening can be applied to any instrument that has those abilities. Some instruments that don't really have the abilities to play chords, you might have to look at the melody structures, and try to focus on that if you're not really able to play chords in what you're doing, or if you're a percussionist or whatever, something like that. So we're going to try to steer into some kind of instrument specific, and we're going to focus on the guitar. My main instrument is the guitar, so we might go through a whole lot of the basics again as we explore the guitar to be able to visualize what's happening on the guitar. And even with that understanding, that you'll be able to understand some of the things that we're trying to relate to that instrument that would have to do to any instrument you want. And we're probably going to look at other instruments also as we go farther and farther on this channel. But the first one we're going to do is the guitar. And as we get through most of the basics of looking at the guitar, we'll start to explore some more of the more advanced theoretical concepts again, but from the perspective of the guitar. But those concepts are still the same, because at this point you should have a pretty good understanding that with the foundations you can take flight and go wherever you want. You just, where you go and how you move around in music theory and how you use it, all those theoretical concepts are just there to make it easy for you to work with music theory, so that you don't have to, rebuild the wheel every time that you make a song. Sometimes you will want to rebuild the wheel. You'll be like, no, I don't like that. Or you think you're doing something new that somebody might have done 300 years ago, but that you don't know about, but, that you can go to school for, for a whole lot of years studying, time frames and time eras and things that have been constant and distant in different eras and time. and different concepts have been applied. And that's all great stuff if you got the time to do it. But if you're watching this channel, you're probably not at Juilliard. You might be, I don't know, but you might not be. I mean, does that make sense? You might be at home. You might be a musician that's struggling along or trying to understand your theory, that you can't afford to go to a university like that. You don't have the time. You don't have the money. And so this channel, you should hopefully be able to get a whole lot of that going on and understanding with a little bit of work on your part to work out those theory concepts and understand what you need from it. One of the biggest things that I tell students is like, well, I don't know how much theory you need, bro. I mean, or how much of a virtuoso instrumentalist you need to be for what you want to do. I mean, Willie Nelson, I would not be spending, 30 years with him at Juilliard, on the piano learning to play, I mean, I just wouldn't, because he don't really going to want to go there. That's not what he wants to do anyway. So I mean, it wouldn't be, productive to spend that kind of time, on his theory and on his performance and, those kind of things. It just wouldn't be. And I know that might sound, different, but I mean, you have to really look at where you want to go with the music and understand what you want. And that can be, I always leave my channel open for you to ask and leave me messages if you want, because some people just don't need all that theory and all that practice. They're not going to become virtuoso instrumentalists. They're not going to spend that kind of time on it, and they're trying to find some level in their theory and their performance and their abilities to perform what they want to do. And so that's a huge subject, to where at some point you just got to go, I got enough theory, I have enough understanding of music and what's going on with it to do what I wanted to do, and or not, and then you need to figure out what you're missing as you understand the theory better and better, that you will be able to view what your kind of what the direction is that you have in mind from a more advanced, knowledgeable position to evaluate where you need to go and, to what level you need to get to do what you want to do, and be able to ask some people that can help you understand what you need to understand to be doing what you want to do with music. And that may sound really long-winded, but that's very true. So basically, at this point, we're going to move into the guitar, and we are going to look at the guitar, and we're going to go through some of our theory, and we are really going to focus on the guitar. And then as we get towards the middle of it, or as we get more advanced through it, we will start looking at a lot more really advanced concepts as far as music that can be related definitely directly to an instrument that I'm familiar with, and that should be translatable to just about any instrument. It's just the concepts we're talking about. I try to leave most concepts very open, to where it's not like it's blue, bro, because, when it's just blue, that you don't really have anywhere else to go, and it's not like it's 2 plus 2, it just doesn't work that way, it might be 2 plus the shade of 9, and you'll be like, what? And it's like, well, I mean, it's really hard to describe that, and it's really hard to attach some kind of theoretical concept sometimes to what might be happening when you just take flight, the more advanced you get anyway. So, let's go ahead and have one last review of our advanced theory. We talked about the basic theoretical components. We talked about advanced theory being a tapestry of all those basic components and being able to go wherever you want. And a good understanding of that is if you really want an understanding of that, is to really look at movie scores from all different types of movies, and like audio for games, how it changes, and it'll go from one, and they're trying to lead it and make transitions going from one place to another, that, all over the place, and sometimes to different genres, and having moments of silence before it changes into some kind of transition that's going to go from some classical thing into some rock thing. You might have to work that out a little bit. It just doesn't flow right into this symphony, into, the 7 dead heads, Nine Inch Nails or something, I mean, you just the working on the transition itself is a lesson in music theory. What did he have to do there? I had to sit down and think about how did he make that go from that real quiet, scene, of out in that field that's all da 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 and the birds chirping to this axe murdering scene that's all of a sudden, the sun went down and here comes the night and here comes an deranged lunatic with the machete. What happened there? How did he do that? Those are huge lessons. And, you can study that in music theory and in classical, but some people will just get bored with it. They'll just be like, oh, no, wait, hold on. And it starts seeming way too mathematical. But if you look at it from that experience, from that perspective, and looking at those movie scores and downloading the music for them, the whole score for the whole movie, or video games. Sometimes video games will do that. I mean, there's some complex video games that do go all over the place. And things that they do that are going to be transitional, they're going to be mood, to try to emphasize some type of mood, or, being sonically compatible and complementary to each other. Sometimes you'll have things happening there that they're trying to not only just do music, but they're trying to make things compatible sonically for things that are happening. And that translates directly into music theory because that's an area of acoustics. You're trying to make things palatable to the listener. And sometimes that can be very difficult to where you're trying to make some sound palatable to some orchestration you're doing and working with it sonically to make it compatible. And video games can be an example of that. Movies, all kinds of things like that. TV shows. Sometimes TV shows are a great thing. You turn off the TV, download the music theme for what's going on or what's happening through the show, and really pay attention to what's going on there. Those can be huge lessons. And the understanding of that, they can help you in just about any type of music or genre you're working on to transcend how do I make this feeling or this mood or this transition, or where do I go from here, Oh, wow, that would be cool. And it's like those kind of things are huge lessons. And it's not so theoretical and mathematical looking that some of those things are going to catch your mind and your eye. And then you'll start going, oh, where do I look at that? And then you'll start looking at some classical compositions and what they were doing for transitions and moods and things like that. And you've got hooked by something that's really cool from, some movie score or video game or television, background music. Bob's mad, and then Bob's happy, and then Bob's stupid, and Bob's an idiot, and what's going on in the music back there, how do you play Bob's an idiot music? There's some kind of formula for Bob idiot music. Well, you know what I'm saying? And it's like you ask somebody, what kind of chord progression do you play for Bob's an idiot, looking like a moron sitting on a park bench? Well, listen to Forrest Gump, what's going on? No disrespect to anybody, but you know what I'm saying, that kind of concept, that sounds funny, but those kind of concepts and really digging into that and looking at that can really help you to understand, so that once you understand these basic components we're talking about, those kind of things are something else. They are really trying to emphasize feeling. What's happening with feeling? I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling aggressive. I'm feeling scared to death. I'm feeling end of the world. Or I'm feeling, I'm in love. Or I'm feeling I'm an idiot, or I'm feeling I see an idiot. I feel I see and I want to kill an idiot. I don't know. Whatever feeling that might be happening there, they're trying to put music behind it, so that you can not only see that happening with facial expressions and what's going on theatrically with the actor, but also trying to back that up with theoretical musical concepts and trying to incorporate the feeling into that and make that all one big thing that's a production that's happening. That it's enhancing the whole production. And your job musically is to be able to do that. And you being able to take that kind of stuff and go to your production, and you're writing a song, or you're writing a symphony, or you're writing some type of genre of music, and you're really trying to get this mood or this feeling or this thing happening, to be able to look at those things and really fall back into that because you've spent some time exploring that, you'll have a whole lot less questions when you're going, well, where do I go with this chord progression? I'm trying to feel this rocky thing, or I'm feeling this sad thing, or you know, melancholy feeling, or I'm feeling this angry feeling, or I'm feeling this love feeling, or I'm feeling this doom feeling. You know, what do I do? How do I work around that? And, you know, those are some fun ways to do it, because that way you're not just looking at paper, you know, and you're looking at some symphony from the 18th century going, oh, bro, you know, this just, you know, doesn't seem like fun. Where Forrest Gump does. You know, I can watch Forrest Gump and I can learn, you know, about, oh, and they got this transition, you know, or some cool movie, you know, so that's some stupid, funny movie that has some, you know, all kinds of, you know, mood changes happening, that you can have some fun watching it and listening to the music and really sit down with your instrument and your piano or something out there, you know, your little battery powered, you know, $60 keyboard from Walmart, and right now, what's happening there? Rewind it and play it again and play it again. What's he doing there? He's playing this cool little progression that's a C, D, G, you know, in the key of C. He went major, minor, minor, and then he did this transition that he climbed up, and he climbed down, and he slowed down and retarded a little bit. Retard, you know, we talked about that on music notation. And, you know, then he went to this other key, and he did this other cool thing, and what was happening? He did this thing with the bells, but it was playing in keys, so I figured out what notes he's playing there, and he was playing this, you know, this C major in the key of F all of a sudden, and it just kind of, you know, it did this transition to that, and it modulated to that key, and it was just so cool, you know, and you start to understand that, and it's much more fun seeing it that way. So I hope that those concepts are a culmination of mastering advanced music theory, to where you're able to do that. Sometimes I still have had times I'll be fumbling around and be going, well, where am I going with this, you know? And it's like, you know, and it's like some tapestry going all over the place. And it's like some things are very simple to do and some things aren't. Some things are going to go all over the place, and it sometimes feels like a flight of fancy. But you know, there is a method, or there is some kind of structure happening there that you can define, that you can, you know, that you can look at and, you know, investigate and root out, you know, what's happening with that. So you can look at that, and even simple things like TV shows or movies or video game, you know, things, you know, here comes the bad guys, you know, and here comes all of a sudden, I just saved a girl and kiss and blah, you know, I mean, whatever, all those kind of things, those are investigative tools. And you can investigate in a lot funner way that way, to really understand that as you do that and you spend time doing that, those advanced theoretical concepts will become much simpler in your mind, because you'll be understanding from watching everything that we've talked about so far, to understanding the basic components and building blocks, understanding the basics of what's happening on the staff to voice your theory and to voice articulations and things like that. And to put things in a space and time that, you know, and then as you go along, you can see those advanced theoretical concepts and the tapestries that can happen. Because to some people it just seems like magic, you know, and as you investigate that more, all of a sudden you're starting to directly relate those theoretical concepts and breaking down what's happening in that movie score of that movie you like a whole lot, that's got all those musical changes that are just so cool, you know, to something, breaking it down into the components we talked about, so that you can visualize it on a piece of paper and on your piano and play it, you know, and all of a sudden those concepts start to make sense. And a huge concept to get in your head once you start doing that is not, sometimes you'll write those down. You'll say, well, that's a really cool transition to do if I want to go to happy or sad or doom or whatever. But sometimes it's just a matter of understanding that they modulated. They modulated in this other key, or they used heavy bass, you know, and they use this moog synth with this minor chords, you know, or they went to major chords and they modulated from this minor key into this major key with major chords, you know, with this little tinkly stuff going on. And those kind of things sink in, you know, to where you're looking at things, and it really helps you as you're trying to make music, or you're hearing other music, to interpret what's going on and to improvise. And, you know, improvisations are a huge thing, because people go, well, how do you improvise? I made a video the other night and I was like, well, they'll be playing along and be going, oh, my improvisations sound like crap. I'm playing along, and how do I improvise along with this? And so I did a big old long video about, well, you want to improvise back to one of the tonal chords of what's happening. So if you're playing C major and you're messing around in some mode and in key there, doing some kind of melody, and then all of a sudden it goes to D minor, that you land on one of the tones of that chord or a harmony to it that sounds good. So, I mean, if you got D minor, you'd want to land on there's 3 tones in the basic triad of that. You want to land on one of those tones of that D minor as the beginning of the next line of melody, or something that harmonizes well with those. That's not, causing dissonance with something else happening in the production. Because that's a huge concept to get to your head, because you just land anywhere, it's not harmonizing with that next chord that's coming along. And that's a huge concept to get to understand. And so I hope that lays out advanced theory to a point of where you need to go now to investigate. Because I can teach that stuff, and we can spend the next 10 years and 15 years at Juilliard learning all those concepts, transitions, changing keys, all that kind of stuff, which I do not dissuade you from investigating that. But a good way to just jump into it is to do what I talked about. Look at your favorite movie or some movies that got some really cool musical changes, and really watch them and sit down and listen to what's happening. Facial expressions, and also doom or sad or happy or stupid, and what's happening there. What did he just do? He was playing a major key, and then he went to this augmented thing or something when the guy all of a sudden looked like an idiot. He was all kind of happy, and then all of a sudden some big beautiful blonde went, and you're just an idiot, and he went, dope, and then, the music changed to some augmented chord or something, or some diminished chord, and you're going, and it just fit the expression and the theatrical play and everything. How do I do that? That's advanced music theory. That's a culmination of advanced musical theory, being able to do that. The whole idea of all of a sudden you're being able to, put out and write something that basically is dope, what happened just there. You just change direction to push out some type of feeling or to emphasize some type of feeling. And that might sound wishy-washy if you were a graduate from Juilliard, and I'm sure it does. Well, I'm not sure it does, but, it's obviously I don't have my glasses on. It's Professor, 4 hours of this right now, you're going to get whacked with a stick. Because, that's a fun way to get into it. And the more you do that, and the more you investigate that, and apply the knowledge you have at this point about music, advanced music theory and basic music theory, that you will really start to take flight in that, and really start to see that, and understand what's happening there, and try to break it down to basics. The basics. The guy modulated, or was he left the key? Did he go to some other key? Did he use a bar ligature? When that beautiful blonde said, "You're an idiot, get out of my face," and he went, "Nope," and the music went all corny and stupid, where did he go? Did he change key? Did he just borrow a diminished chord or an augmented chord or a minor chord? And what was everything else doing around him? When the symphony did what? Or the rock band did, started in the A note and then dropped down. What all happened there? What notes did they start out with? Where did they go? What kind of a thing did they do? And if you do that, the advanced theory that you understand, you will start to understand that there are all those basic concepts that are put together to weave some type of tapestry, which normally is a culmination of advanced music theory, being able to voice your emotions and be able to go somewhere. All of a sudden I feel mad and doom, and all of a sudden I'm at this field, and the birds are singing in the waterfall, and there's this acoustic guitar and flute in the background, and I just feel all melancholy and relaxed, and the sun is just a correct, perfect temperature, and I've got a Slurpee that's keeping, does that make sense? I'm just so happy, and just relaxed, and that whole concept can be just a culmination of those things, to be able to voice that. And they're not all concrete concepts. Every time you run to doom, it's doom. It's not going to be that same chord progression in that same key and the same thing happening. So you look at different movies and different game things and different television shows to see doom, oh no, doom. What different concepts are they using? How did they transcend into that? How did they transition into doom all of a sudden? What happened? Or out of doom into, oh yeah, the day got saved. How did they transition out of that? And what did they go to do that? I know I can go on and on about that, but that's where I want you to go next with that. And really spend some time to look at that as a huge part of your schooling, because the more time you spend studying that, the less questions you're going to have about that. And when you go to study some time area or some type of symphony work that they have different formulas for creating songs or transitions and different things or consonant and dissonant at different time periods, that nowadays they'll use them all. It might have been only consonant in this time period, but nowadays all of those concepts can probably be used somewhere in some type of production to give some type of feeling or to help move your production forward somehow. So that can be a never-ending study if you let it go there. But if you just spend some time doing that and looking at that, it'll open up new worlds for you so that you can really, go, wow, that's what they're doing there. And I understand the theory, and I understand how to notate it, and I understand how it's happening in time. They speed it up or they slow down, and they changed key. And all those concepts really you start to become enlightened about what's happening. And then you start writing stuff, and you're going, wow, 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 where can I use that? And, and the more that you investigate and deconstruct to understand what's happening, the more options you have for where you can go. And that's very cool. And you will have a really good understanding of music theory and advanced music theory. And even if you don't have all of 30 years at Juilliard of being able to voice that and say, well, that is that, bop, 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 you have a really good understanding of what they're trying to do, what might be happening there, what you need to do to deconstruct it if you want to use it. And you're like, well, that's really cool, bro. And I go find the basic components and start deconstructing it with what I understand about theory to be able to, understand what's happening to that. And that's a really huge tool for helping you being able to also go back and go, wow, I learned so much cool stuff here. Now I can go back to this genre that I'm really happy in, and I can apply some of these things to it. Now you've come up with some whole new different thing. It's like, what happened to country music, bro? I mean, what happened to the twang and all that stuff? Now it's got this other sound. Well, gee, they started listening to that kind of stuff, and then they started listening to other genres and incorporating different things into it, and pretty soon it was this whole other thing that does not sound like Hank Williams Jr. anymore, bro. But they also got a good understanding of what was happening there, and that's a real fun way to get a really heavy immersion into that, and it will really help you with the genre and the type of productions you want to do and the type of music that you're trying to use. So I hope that helped a lot. I hope you enjoyed the series so far, and I hope you stick around because we're going to get into the guitar next. Some of it might be some review for you, but on a specific instrument, and it'll be very helpful for you to be able to see being able to take one specific instrument and start applying these concepts to that instrument or to a specific instrument as we get into, working with a specific instrument, the theory involved with that specific instrument, and advanced theory, instrument specific, of some things that can happen as you become better and better at the chosen instrument you're working at. Or with any type of instrument, what things you are going to want to look at that may be different with one instrument or another. And we're going to, at that point when we get done, we'll see where we're going to go from there. But we're going to move on to the guitar now, and we're going to become more instrument specific on this channel, focusing on the guitar for a while until we've gotten pretty much through there. And then we're going to see what instrument we might go to next, and some other concepts we might deal with. So I hope you enjoyed the series so far. I hope you have a really good understanding of music basic theory, some very positive understandings and very in-depth understandings of some advanced concepts in advanced musical theory, so that those concepts you are able to investigate to weave the tapestries that you want in the chosen area that you have in working with music. And I certainly hope that you go start investigating those movie themes and the television themes and game themes or whatever, things like that, to understand the theatrical significance of incorporating, understanding that those theoretical concepts are a basic building block to help you find your feelings and to notate your feelings in space and time and what's happening, so that you can relate them to someone else and see how they've used those structures when they just had a feeling, that it's got to transcend like that into this other doom feeling or this happy feeling or whatever was happening, and what was going on there and how those theoretical concepts apply to that. When not all the time that it's totally theoretical, but sometimes it was a feeling they were trying to get to, and they used theory and their emotions to come up with some kind of, in combination with what's happening theatrically, to make a composition that is complementary to the whole production, which can really help you refine what you're doing in music, even when it's not theatrical and working with some other type of medium like actors and movies and things like that. So I hope you enjoyed this series so far. I hope you have a pretty good understanding of music theory, some notation to voice your theory on, and a very good understanding of what advanced theory concepts mean and what the purpose is of advanced theory concepts. And now I hope you go get some movies that your favorite ones that got some really good transitions and that are very good at voicing different types of moods and feelings and changes and different kind of emotions, and you to go investigate that with those mediums and theatrical mediums to have a much better understanding of advanced musical theory and how that's trying to relate the emotion and the theoretical concepts into some type of tapestry to build something beautiful and to compose something very cool and something that's a work of art and a masterpiece in itself. Peace, hope, love. Hope you enjoyed the series so far, and I'll see you in the next video when we start instrument-specific studies on the guitar.